Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Ciara from Ciara T Designs, and today I have a card for you on the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. So let's jump right in. So to start, I always kind of like to cut my cardstock down. So I am going to make a slimline card, and I have a full-size sheet of cardstock here, and I'm going to cut 4 inches off, and that's going to give me my base. And I'm also going to cut down a piece of black cardstock, but I'm going to use a die to actually cut this to the size that I want. So I only cut a piece off of the end there. I think it was like 3.5 inches. By 8.5 inches, and I'm scoring at the 3.5 mark. So this is a 3.5 by 8.5 inch slimline card. That's my preferred slimline size. There's no right or wrong size. That's just what I have a tendency towards. So full, it's 7 inches by 8.5 inches, and then scored at 3.5. And here I'm going to use 2 of the Pink Fresh Studios slim diagonal stitched rectangles. I used one of the ones with the slimline, like the diagonals on that white panel, and then I also used just one of the ones that would cut out a panel and use that on my black cardstock. That's just because I wanted to use them because I have them. You could have absolutely trimmed these out with just your trimmer, and that would look great too, but I think that little bit of the diagonal stitching around the panel really adds something to the final card. So that's kind of what I was thinking there, and I have them, so I mean, I like to use what I have in my stash. So here I have the Altenew Tall Tales. I have the stamps and the dies, and I'm going to stamp out a couple of the images on some Copic friendly paper with some Copic safe ink. I use Gina K Amalgam Ink. You can use whatever Copic safe ink you have. There's a few on the market, a few really great ones. This is just my preferred one. And then I'm going to stamp out the image of the little girl, 1 stack, and then 2 stacks of the books, sorry. And I'm going to stamp it a few times, and I did use my Misti for this. I just find it easier, especially with brand new stamps, to use a Misti, simply because I find they don't always stamp really great the first time you stamp them, because sometimes there can be a little bit of residue left on the stamps that you need to kind of remove. And then I just flipped over my piece of cardstock there, and I'm going to stamp out the books one more time. You could clean off your stamp. I didn't, and it's okay because it doesn't move once I set it down, but be aware that you might get a little ghosting if you don't stamp it in exactly the same place twice. It didn't really bother me, although you probably should clean your stamps. I'm kind of bad for that, so just maybe don't do what I do, just clean your stamps. But it turned out okay in this instance, so it wasn't a big deal. And as you guys saw from the beginning image there, we are going to do a rainbow stack of books. I have a thing for bright colors. If you've seen any of my videos, I generally lean towards bright colors, so that's kind of what I was thinking here. So I did bring in another stamp from that stamp set on just an acrylic block, and I'm going to create my own pattern paper in the background. I have antique linen here, Distress Oxide ink, because it stamps beautifully, and I thought that that color really lent itself well to books and very neutral. So I kind of creating my own pattern paper here in the background, but I didn't want it to stand out too much because it's not the focal point. Like the little girl and the books are obviously going to be my focal point on this card, but I just really wanted something in the background to add a little bit of extra texture and interest. So I just kind of stamped it wherever I thought it would look good. There's no real rhyme or reason to how I'm doing this. I didn't really plan it out. I just kind of wanted to create my own pattern paper with this stamp. And this would work beautifully with any smaller stamp that you have. Any big stamp too, really. It just kind of looks pretty neat, I thought. So, and it turned out really well. So I'm going to jump right into the Copic coloring, and I have sped this up quite a bit. I don't color this fast. That would be amazing, but I don't. And I kind of colored this little girl like she was me. I am an avid reader. I love novels. My mom and I actually have like our own little book club, and we choose books to read, and we both read them, and then we discuss them over tea every day. So it's pretty amazing. But so for her hair, I used E25 and E27. And then the skin tones, I used E13 and E15. There's not a lot of shading to this image, so I didn't really worry about exactly where a cast shadow might have been. I kind of just brought in 2 colors that I liked the colors of and kind of just colored with them. There's no right or wrong way to color. You could have done this in watercolors or, you know, pencil crayons, and it would still be stunning. So, I mean, use what you have and you know, like, just color however you like. You could absolutely color this anyway, which I think is pretty amazing. I brought in BG000 for the glasses that she's wearing, and then the dress is V15 and V17. Purple is my favorite color. However, I also did her dress in purple so that I knew she would be sitting on top of the stack of books, and I didn't bring purple into my rainbow colors. So this kind of makes up for that. I have E41, and I'm going to color in all of the pages of the novels. And I didn't do them perfectly. I kind of left some white area as well while coloring them in. E41 I felt was not super similar to my Antique Linen Distress Oxide ink, but I felt like it was fairly close, so it kind of pulls in that background that we did with the one stamp and kind of distributes that color somewhere other than just in the background. I also brought in C7 and C9 for the little girl's shoes and the little tags kind of hanging out of those books. I have a tendency towards a dark gray color when I want something to be black. I find that it adds a lot more depth to a black than just bringing in black by itself. But you could absolutely bring in black by itself, and that would be okay too. So for my rainbow of colors, we're going to use RV04 and RV06 for the pinks, and you can see that I'm going to do them backwards to one another. So on my bottom stack of books, I start with the bottom book, and on my top stack of books, I start on the top of the stack of books. This is just because I can, not because there's any real rhyme or reason to why I've done this. And then for my orange, I have YR04 and YR16. And for the shadowing, I'm mostly just adding it where the book is sitting on top of another book, where the shadow would cast naturally from the book being on top of another one. Otherwise, there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to it. I kind of just like to add a little bit of depth to things. I mean, this is a pretty simple color blend here. There's just 2 colors per each book. For yellow, we have Y08 and Y19. And again, it's the same. I'm going to do... This one actually is the middle book on both stacks because that's how that works. But there's not a lot of that book showing. And then the green, I have G14 and G16. And again, it's the same. I'm just going to color it in and then add a little bit of shadow where the books kind of overhang one another. And then for the blues, we're going to do B04 and B16. So for the little girl's book, I struggled a little bit with what color to color it. I almost wonder if I should have done her book purple and done her dress maybe a different color, because I've kind of completed my rainbow at this point, right? So, because the purple is now on top on her dress, but her dress isn't a very big surface. So I kind of wish I had maybe done her book purple and then maybe done her dress a different color, but I didn't. I opted to color her book gray, so that it wasn't going to take focus maybe from the stack of books. So that's kind of where I was going there. You could absolutely have colored it purple instead. I mean, you could have colored it purple even though her dress was purple. It just would have had a bunch of purple on top. I just opted to go gray. So for the top book, I did C1 and C3, which is the same cool grays that I used for her shoes and the little tags hanging out of the other books, just to kind of pull in that cool gray together. Again, you could have done it like the antique linen style color or something more neutral. But I opted to go gray, so that's kind of where I went there. And I do have the matching dies here. You can see that I've already cut them out with the matching dies, and I've kind of just lined it up on that panel to kind of figure out where I want my sentiment to be. And I put it back in my Misti just to make sure that I stamped the sentiment straight. And I think that this is super cute. I think that this would have made a really cool bookmark. I mean, in this instance, I didn't make a bookmark, but I think that it would have made a beautiful bookmark. I think this set really lends itself to, if you have someone who reads avidly, this would be a great set for that. So I'm going to stick my books down just with some Nuvo Deluxe glue, and you saw that I kind of had my layout set out there while I was kind of playing with the design ideas. And I'm just going to stack them one on top of the other. I did consider bringing in a third set of books, but I didn't like how it lined up. I felt like I was going to have to trim them quite a bit, so I didn't end up doing that in the end. I kind of pondered it, but I didn't, because I didn't want her to be too tall and have no room for the sentiment at the top, so I kind of nixed that idea and just did the 2 stack of books, which I think looks really cool. I also brought in some really thin 3D foam strips, or foam squares. I love these things. They're not new to me now, but they were a newer discovery for me when I joined the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel, the design team, and I have fallen in love with them. I think I order them almost every month now because I just love these. They add a little bit of dimension, so they're not, you know, it's still really easy to mail and fit into an envelope and everything, but they add enough dimension that you can tell that there's something else going on there, and I just think that they're such a great addition to a craft room. So I'm going to bring in my same Nuvo Deluxe glue. I'm going to glue down that black panel, or the black mat onto my Slimline card base there. And I always do a side fold. You can do a top fold. It's more of a pain in the butt, but you can do a top fold. You just have to cut your paper differently. I'm too lazy for that, to be honest with you, because it's harder to do. And I like how these Slimlines are like this, but that's just kind of my preferred way to do the Slimline cards. There's no wrong way, and there's so many great dies out for these now. It's amazing how many dies have kind of come out for Slimline cards. It's so great. I love it when a bunch of new stuff comes out. But yeah, so then I just glued that down onto my black mat and lined it up. I kind of eyeball it. You could absolutely try to measure this out easier if you wanted to. I eyeball things, and generally it turns out pretty good, so I have a tendency to stick to that. I also brought in a little bit of glossy accents just to put on her little glasses there. You only see them kind of peeking out behind that book. I just thought that was so cute. And for a little bit of embellishment, I'm also going to bring in some Nuvo drops in Oyster Gray. I thought that was kind of cool. And I'm just going to kind of put them around the sentiment there. You can see that I did bring in a test strip of cardstock and kind of use that first, just in case there was a bunch of air in there, so that I could still make my drops look really nice. That's kind of a trick that I have for using Nuvo drops if you ever have a problem. Also warm your bottle up a little bit. I tend to warm them up. I hold them for a little bit before I go to use them, and that kind of just gives me a bit of a more consistent amount that comes out. And then I use a little scrap piece of paper to try and test them out first. So you can also see on the books I did add a little bit of a highlight with a pen, and I just because I thought that looked cool. There's no rhyme or reason to it. So here's the card I made for you guys. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. There's lots of amazing creators on this channel that would love to check out their stuff and see how they're doing. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, and I will see you guys again soon. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.